Hello everybody, Arctic here, and welcome to my list for the 10 consoles that failed the worst. This list was so long that I actually have runners up. Yeah, that's amazing. So here we go. Number 10. Number 10 is the 3DO Interactive Multiplayer. The Interactive Multiplayer sold about 2 million units and really wasn't a bad idea, but it went up against the competitors like the Saturn and the PlayStation towards the end, and early on it was going up against the Super Nintendo and the Genesis. And so think about this. We have the Genesis and the NES, which were both really good, and then you follow that up with the PlayStation and the Saturn, which, yes, the Saturn didn't do as well, but still, we all know where PlayStation went from there. So it really wasn't that it was a bad console, it just could not compete. On top of that, it had a rough starting asking price of $699. Given the fact this came out in the early 90s, holy cow. So, it tried to stick it out, but just couldn't make it. Number 9. Number 9 will be the Philips CDI-1. With roughly 1 million units sold, it cost them a total of about $1 billion in losses because it just could not compete. It could not do what they wanted. It did not help that it came out in '91 at a huge asking price of $700, and that was probably their first mistake. But on top of that, it ran for about 7 years trying to stick around. But, and had internet features later on. In '96, it came out with a modem that cost $150, meaning this whole console was $850. Yeah, stuff kind of came down, but still. It was marketed as a system, to be a cheap alternative to a computer, so it could do all this cool stuff, but just, in the end, it utterly failed. Number 8. Coming in at number 8 is the only console in this list that really should not have been here, but it had to be, and that will be the Veltrix. See, the Veltrix came out in November of '82, and if you are a big enough nerd to know what that entails, let's go ahead and explain if you don't. See, it came out in North America in '82 and was killed by the video game crash of '83. It was a pretty sound system. It was really, really good, but the video game crash of '83 killed it. It came out at $200 and dropped down to $49 before dropping out of the market at the beginning of '84. Number 7. Number 7 will be the RCA Studio 2. It was released January of 1977. Holy cow, I did not think I'd be doing a console that old. It was discontinued in '78. It was made obsolete by the launch of the Fairchild F, and then later completely annihilated by the Atari 2600. So, yeah, it had 14 games that came out with it. 5 of them were built in, and all I can say is I couldn't find any numbers for sales or anything else beyond that. It really just could not compete. Coming in at number 6 is possibly the most obscure system on this list, the Nuon. The Nuon was built into DVD players. It was built into several DVD players. It had about 8 games for it in total. There's been several homebrew ports since then, 17 that I could find. But it was a interesting concept, I guess, having a bunch of other people make your system for you, and, well, problem is it had like 5 different controllers that you could buy. Some games required different controllers. Some of the games, it also had the ability to play certain really cool special features on a grand total of 4 movies, all released by 20th Century Fox. So yeah, the Nuon just kind of was obscure. The company who made it was bought in like '82, and so it just kind of went. Number 5. Number 5, you probably expected to be on this list eventually, is the Virtual Boy. It released July of '95 in Japan and August of '95 in North America, and was discontinued in December of '95 in Japan and March of '96 in the US. That ought to tell you how quickly the system died. It had a total of 22 games, 14 of them for the US, 19 of them for Japan. Only about 770,000 copies were ever sold. It was possibly Nintendo's biggest fail ever. They only had one other system that was even close, and we'll talk about that in the honorable mentions because it did not actually make the list. The games were in red, monochrome red, because this was supposed to make it cheaper. The entire concept of it was a cool concept. It was too heavy, it was not portable, and it just did not really work out well. Also, it was kind of a battery hog. Number 4 will be the Sega 32X. Now, the Sega 32X was their cheap way to play 32-bit games and to actually try and keep their system relevant. They wanted to make a whole new console, but that was going to take too long, and they wanted to jump right into the race, so they went ahead and made an add-on, because they thought, well, that's faster, and they rushed it in, and there you have it. This led to only about 655,000 sold, had a really small library of only about 40 games, really did not make it much of anything. It was just something you could clip on and play. Whenever they finally released the Saturn, it stuck around 2 years, and they released the Saturn to brush it away. So I guess it was their way to try and stay relevant while they made a new one, but in the end, it just kind of made them look like dicks. Number 3, the only one on this list I currently own, the Hyperscan. Now, I actually bought it on clearance in a store, but still. Number 3, the only item on this list I currently own, it's actually in a shoebox, the Hyperscan. The Hyperscan was marketed towards young children, although the rating of all their games was above the marketed children, age. So, it had a T and E10 plus, and so, yeah, good job. It used cards. It used cards with RFID chips to store all your stuff on, and so you could, scan it and play. And it was a really interesting concept. It's something that we currently use with like Skylanders and Lego and stuff like that. So the concept did stay in the market. The system just could not do it. Only had 5 games come out for it. Had 2 more in the works. And you had to buy the games, which came with cards, and you had to buy card packs that, get you other cards. It was really weird, and it kind of just debuted and dropped. So, Number 2, the Atari Jaguar. This was the last console that Atari made. It was cheaper than the competitors, but was small, low-quality library. It just could not really do very good, could not compete. It was hard to program for. It was hard to make any games for it. It was hard to do really anything with it. And so it just couldn't get off the ground and fizzled out with less than 250,000 sold. Only 67 licensed games were made for it, and it just kind of died, and Atari left the game market after that. Now for our honorable mentions. So we're going to start out with the Tiger R-Zone. Literally, the whole idea of the Tiger R-Zone was to come off the hype of the Virtual Boy, and since the Virtual Boy obviously made our list, you know why this one made this list. Because why? The Nokia N-Gage. The Nokia N-Gage sold about 3 million units. It wasn't that bad, but it was also a mobile phone game system mixed in one. Had 56 games made for it. The Action Max. The Action Max used VHS tapes to play your games, and there was no way to actually win the games, and all of the games were pretty much a carbon copy of each other with different graphics pasted over them. And it didn't even play its own games. You had to hook it to a VCR. Whoa! The Ouya. I really didn't want to put this on the list because it was such a cool idea and it raised $8.5 million on Kickstarter. But it had very light sales, really didn't do any good, really couldn't get pushed, and was made obsolete by mobile phones really quick after launch, meaning it really couldn't compete with anything, really just kind of sunk off and died. Okay, I lied. I do own this one, too. The PlayStation Vita. The PlayStation Vita moved 4 million units, but could not compete with the 3DS, and being the fact that it's about as powerful as a PS2, if not a little more powerful than a PS2, it just really was hard to get any devs to make anything for it. Small devs were intimidated by it, big devs didn't want to waste their time with it, and so it has a really, really, really small game library. I love the system, but unfortunately, its game library really kills it. It's really cool to use with your PS4 though. The Nintendo 64 DD. The 64DD was kind of the same concept that the Sega 32X had, and kind of met with the same appeal. It was a clip-on to the N64 cartridge system so that it could play disc games, and yeah. The GameCube eventually came out and we were very happy. The last honorable mention being the Dreamcast. The Dreamcast sold 9.13 million copies. It's probably the most successful unit on this list. The Ouya probably made more money, but still. Had a decent library, just was no competition to everything else. So unfortunately, Sega kind of lost out. Sad that Sega keeps making the list. Number 1. This one made number 1 due to how few units it sold and everything about it. The Pioneer Laser Active. It sold 10,000 units, had roughly 33 games for it. It was not region locked, so you could play all these other games, but it was kind of locked to developer because there was a couple versions of it, and so it was kind of, there was Sega games and there was other games, and it was kind of a cool concept, but it cost $970 for the unit. Had add-ons for it that were just kind of weird, and just it couldn't do anything, couldn't move anything. It was released in '93 and just kind of fizzled out with less than 10,000, well, with roughly 10,000 sold. And there you have it, my list for the 10 game consoles that just failed hard. If you like this, go ahead and hit that like button. If you have a suggestion for a list I could do in the future, a facts video or top 10, anything like that, go ahead and put it down in the comment section down below. I would love to hear your input. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, have fun, and I will see you later.